Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Creating accessible auditions with the Neurodivergent Curious Incident team.
We just finished callbacks and they were so exciting. It's so nice to work with everyone and the vibe is so good.
Why am I so nervous about this? This is literally my job. I didn't script this though, so there's that.
My name is Sid. I use they, them pronouns. I am the choreographer movement director for this production. I am a white person in my early 20s. I have red hair up in a ponytail and a pink colored shirt on. I'm sitting in front of a black wall.
Hi friends, my name is Sydney Zarlingo. I use they, them pronouns. For blind and low vision folks, I am a white person in their early 20s wearing a dark teal shirt with a white button-up open on top. I have shoulder-length brown curly hair. I'm the director for this project. We are doing the first all neurodivergent cast and crew production of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. I will also be playing Christopher, and we are so glad to have you here watching our little playlist of things. This project is a world's first. There has never been anything. There have been things vaguely like it before. We've seen neurodiverse theaters have existed and do exist, as well as disability theaters do exist, but a purposefully all neurodivergent cast and crew production of something is fairly, as far as we can tell from research, never been done before. I don't know if that's, maybe it has. I think it definitely has, but not everybody knew they're neurodivergent, you know? But anyway, so because this has never really been done before, specifically, there's not a lot of resources on how to make accessible theater education for higher ed. Typically, accessible theater education resources you see are for middle school and elementary school. And as a college student myself, who's tried to go through conservatory things, it's very difficult for disabled people. So we're trying to make a sort of guidebook, I guess, on how we did it and what we learned and what we still have questions about. It's going to be messy. We've acknowledged that, and that's going to be perfect. So today's video is specifically about the audition process, how we made auditions accessible. Specifically, we see auditions being one of the actual biggest problems for disabled people in the theater because we often, and this is with job interviews as well, we go directly on how we judge somebody's social skills and how we think that they would fit socially, rather than seeing how they actually work in a space and how they're able to do the job. Because when people are really anxious, their social skills aren't as good, and also our norms of social skills are very neurotypical based, and that's not fair to anybody, and it means that disabled people are very unemployed because of just ableism and basic interviews and auditions. So we're trying to make even this little piece accessible, which a lot of people wouldn't even think about the importance of that, but we did. So here are some things that we did in order to try to make our auditions more accessible that you might want to put into your system. So first of all, we held virtual auditions for some who needed it. We have obviously COVID concerns still are a case, and we have an actor who is abroad right now for a few weeks, so they'll be back for the rest of the production. And we have an actor who didn't have transportation but will shortly, and those kinds of things. And so rather than just saying, nope, you're not on the show, we actually give them the opportunity to audition virtually. Some people just feel more comfortable doing that in their own homes and then actually working in the space. They feel fine once they have the role, so we left that up as an option if people needed it. Obviously, it's preferred to see everybody in person. We love that, but we did keep that in mind. We also sent out an email beforehand to everybody who wanted to audition with a visual story. And a visual story is basically a picture description of where you're going to go, who you're going to meet, what to expect, what the situation's going to look like, what potential social norms might be. So for example, for the movement portion of our audition, we sent out a visual story that was like, here's all the people that you're going to meet, here's how you get to the room, and we would love if you would wear more movement clothing. Also, please remember to eat and drink beforehand, for example, and bring a water bottle. So they had all the social norms beforehand, so they knew what to expect when they came, so anxiety was less, and more people specifically said that they felt like they actually could audition. They weren't sure if they wanted to or not because they were so anxious about it, but then because they had the visual story, they felt comfortable doing it. And now we have them in our show, so that's pretty awesome. We also sent in that email a question asking what accommodations do you need, so that we could keep in mind that some people might need chairs, some people might not need chairs, and alternate communication options, and we had a lot of fidget toys for people to use if they needed it, and if somebody were blind or low vision and needed to print out their sides in a larger font, we also sent the sides beforehand. We told them, don't worry about it, you don't need to practice, it's totally fine, but if you want these beforehand, if that makes you feel more comfortable to know what to expect, here they are for you. We also sent out the audition form beforehand, and again told them, when you're here, you'll have the time to fill out the audition form, but if you wanted to fill it out beforehand, if that's easier for your brain, you are welcome to do that. And obviously we accepted those forms, both digital. Some people typed them and then sent them to us, or written down. We also obviously chose an accessible space to audition in. There are not very many accessible spaces for specifically theater studios on this campus. So we were able to get a specific room in the art building that has Marley floors. It's a type of dance floor that we could use, and they let us use the space, and it is wheelchair accessible, and there's an elevator, so we made sure to do that. There's also lots of natural lighting, so if somebody had photosensory disorder, we could choose to turn off the overhead lights and just use those lights, or vice versa. So that was also really helpful. We also made sure to give lots of advance about when auditions were coming, so people could process if they wanted to audition and then go about it, rather than the traditional telling you about it 3 days before and then having auditions happen. And we also made sure to let them know during the process where we were at, right? So we made sure to send out the callbacks as soon as we could. And we're going to send out the cast list as soon as we can, shortly after audition, so that they're not stressing for an absurdly long amount of time. And also making sure that we are emailing people who don't get into the show, so that they know that it's a lot of theaters traditionally you'll never hear back from them, or they'll never tell you the time frame of when you're going to hear back about something, and so that can cause a lot of unnecessary anxiety for people. So we very explicitly said, in the auditions, you will know by this time on this day if you have gotten in, or if you have not gotten in, we will let you know either way. But that's the before and the setup of the auditions. Let's talk about the actual audition setup. So during auditions, the first thing that we did was we all sat down and we had a discussion about informed consent. What are you getting into? This show specifically has lots of trigger warnings and things, and obviously this is a very big deal, and it's going to be very well publicized, so we wanted to make sure that they were also comfortable with that it wasn't just going to be within our college community. It was going to be a lot bigger than that. And we discussed what the auditions are going to look like, what's going to happen, and we talked through everything, and then they were able to ask a bunch of questions, so we were able to get all those anxieties out of the way. I think a lot of theater situations tend to be oh, the element of surprise actually teaches you a lot about how a person can handle things. And that is true, but that's also not necessarily fair, because in an audition setting, it's already, there's one thing about an element of surprise, how they're going to deal with the stress thing down the line, but down the line, you've been with a cast for, a few weeks, and you've figured stuff out for, a few weeks. And so everybody's comfortable with each other. But when everybody's meeting everybody for the first time and they're auditioning, and there's a lot of extra anxiety, throwing another surprise there might just completely break a person and make them unable to do their best. And so we made sure to not do that, because we didn't think that showed any more of their skill than anything else. We also made sure to set up an environment of collaboration rather than competition. So saying, hey, these are all, your friends, and you are all probably going to end up working together at some point, which they actually ended up really making friends and hanging out in the lounge after, which was really great. We also, in general, during auditions, tried to focus less on somebody's social skills, their interpersonal skills, and more on what they were able to do. We had, specifically within autism, right, everybody's social skills, and I say that we don't like calling them social skills, because everybody has social skills. The question is, are they typical or are they atypical? Everybody communicates and exists with people differently, and we tried not to necessarily pay attention to that, because everybody, when they're anxious, again, auditions are a very anxiety-provoking thing. So we tried to make sure that we weren't specifically judging on social skills, right? We were, are you able to do the thing? Yes, you are able to do the thing, and you're absolutely killing it with these lines. We know that you will get comfortable with us down the line, and things will get figured out, so don't worry too much about that. I think, as I've talked about before, interviews tend to be very can you make eye contact and shake somebody's hand perfectly? No? Then you don't get the job, even though that has nothing to do with the job. So we focused more on, how can you work in the space? Did you read the lines gorgeously? Absolutely you did. You did great movement. Awesome. And also, it's not just we weren't specifically focusing on what you can do right now. It was also, how are you willing to stretch? How are you willing to learn? What are you comfortable doing? And how can we see that you are going to grow and expand? Because we have a long rehearsal process. Most shows have a long rehearsal process, whether that's long in time or long in amount of time in a short time period. Either way, it's a long amount of time that you are in the rehearsal space learning and growing. And so we wanted to keep that in mind when we were casting and when we were meeting people for the first time, because what we see right now is not the finished product, and we know that. So it's more creating an ensemble and seeing who's willing to learn and expand and grow over this time period. And then also when they were performing, we were not specific, like, you need to stand right here and you need to have the perfect actors neutral. Like, I think that we're all very used to seeing the actors neutral, you have to sit or stand a perfect way, and that's how you have to act. But we specifically said before every single audition, you are allowed to sit, you are allowed to stand, you are allowed to stand however you want, you are allowed to fidget, you are allowed to move whatever you want. And some people just chose to stand there. Some people created a whole movement piece, and it was incredible. And we learned so much more about that person from that than we would have from anybody else. And that was really incredible. And seeing people just suddenly free to fidget a little bit made their acting so much better than when they were forced to stand there perfectly.
We tried to really focus on like actually being able to see just the most, I guess, instinctual movement from the people that were here, because obviously we are a very neurodivergent team. A lot of movement in theater is very structured feeling, especially in terms of like neutral positions. So we mostly focused on trying to live a little more organically, and it made it so nice to be able to watch all of these people like introduce themselves like that, you know?
Because if you think about it, right, in a show, if somebody needs to fidget, you can find a way for their character to fidget in character. I personally do that all the time. But it's very easy to figure those things out. We don't want them to be the perfect neutral. There's no such thing as neutral. We're going to talk about that more down the line. But we made sure to say that whatever you're comfortable with, whatever makes you feel the most safe in the space, whatever makes you feel like you can show us the best work that you can make is what we want to see. And that is what we got.
We have a cast, and it's gonna be so good, and we're just so excited.
Auditions were amazing. Everybody was so nice, and I'm really excited about the crew and the cast that we have figured out. So we'll introduce them to you in the next video, probably.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's all you have to say?
Yep.
We'll see you in the next one. We're gonna come up with an intro and an end at some point. Just stay tuned for that.